Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank y'all for coming out this morning. My name is Brandon Shoemaker. I'm a genealogy associate here at the Southwest Louisiana Genealogical and Historical Library, and we're a branch of the Calcasieu Parish Public Library. Before we get started with Dr. Sutton, I just want to announce that our 2013 Reminiscent Writing Contest is still going on. And you can submit an entry. Deadline is December the 30th, and the topic is what I've discovered and didn't know about my ancestors. 4 pages, 1,000 words. It doesn't have to be very long. Just send it in. Our speaker today is Dr. William Sutton. He's the co-author of the book Herman Frasch, The Sulphur King. He was born in San Antonio and graduated from the University of Texas at Austin. He's served in the military and received his PhD in history from Louisiana State University. He's taught in South Africa at Alamo College and at the University of Texas in San Antonio. He currently is retired and lives in Prague in the Czech Republic and also in San Antonio. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Bill Sutton.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Well, good morning. I think I'll start off just on December 25th, 1894, because on that date, on Christmas Day in 1894, something quite remarkable happened a few miles to the west of us here. A sulfur deposit was well known to exist as early as 1869, 10 years after the first oil well was drilled in the United States, and people were out there drilling for oil. Only 4 years after the Civil War, the oil was a valuable commodity, and people had a sense there was some out there because it was fairly common in those days. Oil deposits frequently revealed themselves by seepage, and Indians noticed bears with black grease on them. So there was a sense there was oil out there. And the landowner of the big piece of land west of what is now the current city of Sulphur hired or contracted with an oil drilling company to drill for oil. And they didn't find any oil. They didn't find any usable or any financial worthwhile. But they dug down, they sent boring holes down about 500 feet into the ground, and found that below about 450 feet of mud and gravel, because it was pretty swampy land out there, there was about 100 feet of solid sulfur, 100 feet deep of sulfur. And the project then became, how do you get to it? And for 25 years, people tried to get to it. They tried to get to it by digging for it, which is basically the way you get to something underground, you dig a hole down there. But they couldn't, as they tried to dig holes to it, the sides kept falling in because it's soft, porous, swampy mud. They encountered underground water deposits. They tried to create a system of digging a hole, putting an iron ring to hold the thing together, and then digging deeper and putting another iron ring to hold the sides of the deposit. Unfortunately, as they tried to do that with men actually physically in there with picks and shovels, pulling out the dirt and the mud, they encountered hydrogen sulfide gas, and a couple of people were killed. The company that was doing it was quite upset about that, and so they didn't quite give up on the idea, but they did pause a little bit and began to investigate other possibilities of trying to get to it some other way than digging for it. And meanwhile, an oil refining specialist named Herman Frasch, who came to this country as a 16-year-old boy back in 1868, left his native Germany, got on a boat, and came to America. Didn't have a dime on his person when he got here. He had to borrow the money to get from New York, where the boat landed, to Philadelphia, where he had some friends or some relatives. He made himself a druggist. He worked under a pharmacist and learned the trade. His formal education was over when he was about 14 years old, but he was a learner. He knew how to learn. And when he was a pharmacist, back in those days, of course, pharmacists made everything they dispensed. Every pharmacy was a laboratory, and he became interested in oil. He became interested in paraffin, which is a wax made from oil, or can be made from oil, that was frequently used as an ointment or as something you could put medication in to make it go down. And got a job when he was in his early 30s, working for Standard Oil Company in Cleveland, when Cleveland was the oil capital of America. Became probably the leading oil refining chemist in the country, the expert, the guy that they went to with problems. Became quite successful there. There were actually 3 Frasch processes, and one of them was something he developed for Standard Oil to remove sulfur from oil, to make it so when you burn that oil, that refined oil, most of which those days was burned as kerosene, it didn't stink. You take that oil, take that sulfur out so that you can actually put it in a kerosene lamp, and it doesn't stink and doesn't corrode. He was quite successful, and branched off, started his own soda manufacturing company. That's the second Frasch process, is a process for turning salt into industrial alkali. A man of interests, a man of projects who like to pick up projects and do them. And according to a story that was published in the Dallas Morning News in the late 1890s, a friend of his who also worked at Standard Oil was becoming interested in fertilizer, as particularly southern farmers were dealing more and more with land that was depleted of much of its nutrients. There was growing demand for fertilizer, and this friend of his became interested in phosphate in Florida. But the best fertilizers they knew at that time were a combination of phosphate and sulfur. So he became interested in sulfur. And he heard about this deposit in Louisiana. And one afternoon, he and Frasch happened to be in the same office, in the Standard Oil offices in Cleveland. And Mr. Squire mentioned this huge deposit that nobody could get to. And he said, Herman, what do you think about this? And Herman thought about it for a while. Thought about it for long enough to prepare a patent application. And Frasch came up with the idea, ingenious, but when you think about it, just astonishingly simple. If we can turn that sulfur into a liquid, we can pump it to the earth like oil. We don't have to dig down to it. You don't dig down to get the oil out. You send a pipe down. Oil, of course, is already a liquid. But if we could turn that sulfur into a liquid, we could just pump it up like water, like oil. As a kid in Germany, he'd watched them bring salt to the earth that way. Salt frequently is found in brine. So it is a chemical issue. It is not terribly difficult to turn sulfur into a liquid because it melts at a fairly, I've forgotten offhand what the melting point is, but it is fairly low for a normal solid. So he came up with the idea of melting it underground and pumping it to the surface, and patented the idea. Frasch almost always patented his ideas. He didn't just leave them out there floating around. He wanted a little protection for his intellectual property. And he approached the owners of the property out there, and as I said, they are not by that time, the owners of the property, a New York-based consortium of wealthy New York businessmen who had gotten control of the property, approached them with it, with his idea, and they were skeptical. They sent his idea off to the leading mining engineers of the day, and they all said, it's crazy, crazy. I mean, theoretically it could work, but there's no way it can really make it happen. Frasch was determined, and he gained access to the land. He got the approval of the company that owned the land to try his project. They were desperate to make that investment worth something, because they paid a pretty good amount of money for the land, paid a pretty good amount of money trying to buy those iron rings and trying the other things, including they toyed with the idea of some guy that came up with the notion of maybe freezing the ground so you could dig through it. So they finally gave Frasch the opportunity. He hired some people, and they dug they drilled the hole, got down into it. He set up some boilers to superheat steam, introduced that steam over the course of several days. He was there over Christmas because that was his vacation from his day job up at Standard Oil as an oil refiner and running that soda company in Cleveland. So he did his work on what for him was vacation time. And on December 25th, 1894, it worked. They turned on the spigot after steaming it for several days and hoping that something happened. They took some sulfur that they had around and touched it up against the pipe, and the sulfur in their hand melted, so hopefully the sulfur down there is melting. They turned on the spigot, and up it came. It emerged like a gusher, quickly filling up the bin that they'd placed to receive it. And Frasch that afternoon was able to sit back and enjoy that moment. We know most of that story from Frasch himself. In 1912, he was given the Perkin Medal, which is the highest, or one of the highest honors that could be given by the chemical profession to one of their own. And he told the story of his work. And remembering all those skeptical people, Frasch wrote that it was kind of fun to sit back and reminded him that he who laughs last laughs best. The skeptics were wrong. He did it in 1894. The Frasch process for mining sulfur, which over time became one of the major methods of producing sulfur from the world, first worked in 1894. But it took him more than a decade to make it work economically. The amount of power that it took to melt the sulfur below the ground meant burning an awful lot of it. Well, at first, he burned slabs of wood, of which there was plenty in this area because of the tremendous lumber industry of Calcasieu Parish, southwestern Louisiana in general. But it just consumed so much that he turned to coal. Unfortunately, coal had to be shipped in by railroad, and it was expensive. What really made the process economical was the sudden supply of cheap fuel about 1901. In 1901, a fellow who had been around the sulfur area named Anthony Lucas, or at least that's his Americanized name, made oil come out of the ground at Beaumont. Spindletop emerged in 1901. And that spurred further exploration, and the Jennings field came in a couple of years later. So all of a sudden, Frasch had lots and lots of cheap fuel. And with that cheap fuel, he could run those boilers 24 hours a day. He could add more boilers. He could dig more holes. By 1907, the United States has transformed from being a net importer of sulfur to being an exporter of sulfur. By 1908, he's the sulfur king. He is the man who could set the international price of sulfur because he is producing so much out there on that piece of land that he can set the world price. He can undercut anybody in the world. The United States, as I said, was transformed from a country that had to import virtually all the sulfur it used to a country that was able to enter into markets around the world, markets which historically have been controlled, in the case of Europe, by the Sicilians, who've been mining sulfur since days before the Roman Empire. One of the more attractive things about Frasch was that he thought about the impact, not just of, wow, this is great, I control the price, price of sulfur, I can make lots and lots of money, which no doubt was part of it, was somewhere in his mind. But what is the impact of that on other human beings? Thousands of people in Sicily made their living digging for sulfur in the old traditional way, pick and shovel. What's going to happen to them? So in what could be considered, it was considered at the time rather controversial, Frasch basically just split the world market. Just said, okay, I will limit how much sulfur I sell in Europe. You Sicilians can have most of that market. I've got enough to make some money selling in Europe. The kind of sulfur that he produced was so pure that it was better than Sicilian sulfur in fumigating. So one of his biggest customers in Europe was the French wine industry, which uses sulfur to kill the bugs that keep grapes from becoming wine. But he entered into an agreement with the consortium that controlled the Sicilian industry, and they that cartel, to use a kind of a controversial word, worked up to World War I. A combination of events in 1914, 1915, as World War I was beginning, broke up it, among other things. It violated the laws of the state of New Jersey, where Frasch's company, called the Union Sulphur Company, which was the union of his idea with the land owned by his partners, the state of New Jersey had laws against cartels, laws against two companies getting together and setting prices and allocating production. And of course the other was the tremendous demand that World War I generated. Sulfur is one of the most useful elements known to man. As I mentioned before, historically it's been used as a fumigant. Turned into sulfuric acid, it is just a basic raw material for the chemical industry. It's used to vulcanize rubber. It's used, as I said, to produce much fertilizer. It's important in making paper. If you're going to make paper out of wood pulp, you need sulfur to convert that pulp into paper. Over time, lots and lots of other specialized industry, and of course gunpowder, the armaments, which became important at the time. So that Frasch's story, it seems to me, is a great success story of an immigrant to this country who made good. It's an inspiring story in that regard, of a man who's willing to work hard, who saw life as a series of challenges and projects and pursued them. There's a stubbornness about Frasch that's fascinating, that he was determined to make that work. What's also interesting is, to me at least, is the reality that Frasch and Louisiana Sulphur needed each other. That piece of land out there was potentially worth millions, but you had to get to it. The land was rich. The land was potentially rich, but it needed somebody who knew, who had an idea that would work to get it out. That land needed Frasch. But Frasch also needed that land, because the Frasch process can only work in deposits like that. It can only work if the sulfur is reasonably pure and is surrounded by rock that will allow you to melt it. When Frasch began working on the project, people didn't know much about such things, but over time, other men, particularly after the success of sulfur, began exploring other places along the Gulf Coast, and what that piece of land out there was an old salt dome. Didn't look like a salt dome. You don't see the dome above the ground, but that's what it is. And as geologists began to understand more and more about the geology, they discovered more and more potential places where it might work. By 1914, as businessmen are noticing that Frasch's patents are expiring, they begin to take his ideas and dig holes in Texas, to Brazosport and Freeport. McMoran was for years one of the great producers of sulfur. Texas Gulf sulfur at Brazosport. Later on, they discovered other salt dome formations in Louisiana. One of the most productive was actually underwater, so that you couldn't dig for it because you had to go through several feet of ocean to get to it. But you could do what Frasch said: drill a hole, and pull it out. Which has led to a number of different ways of looking at Frasch and his work. Geologists have studied salt domes and shared that information, or been commissioned to get that information by exploration companies. There's only a finite number of the world so far. The Frasch process principally was an American activity because of the richness of the salt domes along the Gulf of Mexico, but it's also been used in Mexico, which has similar geological sites. The most recent work with Frasch process has been in places like Indonesia, where you also have similar geological formations. So the Frasch process has been approached by men and women working for oil companies and sulfur companies to broaden their knowledge of geology, to broaden their knowledge of what types of things one is likely to find in salt domes. In fact, eventually they did find oil out there. Reasonably significant amounts of it were produced out there. Frasch always discouraged that because he didn't want to dirty up the sulfur. He didn't want that oil coming up there and filthying up the sulfur. But there has been a fairly significant amount of work done, as I said, mostly by scientists and geologists about those kinds of places. The sulfur industry itself has been the subject of a number of fairly significant works. So one of the best ones is old now, it's about 50 years old, but Williams Haynes took the Frasch process at sulfur as the center of his piece, but it's basically a history of the human use of sulfur dating back to prehistoric man, and the growth of the sulfur industry and the variety of it, which is a fruitful and interesting study of man's encounter with an element and using it and finding different uses for it, and establishing systems of not just the Frasch process, but other ways of getting it. What Russell and I found was there were studies of land, there were studies of the industry, there were lots and lots of studies about the nature of sulfur as an element, but there wasn't a biography of Herman Frasch. Who was this man? And my co-author, Russell Keene, is from Sulphur. He went to Frasch Elementary School. He knew that this guy was important and just couldn't find much about him. Yeah, I mean, we know he was the Frasch process. We know something about December 25th, 1894. But who was this guy? How did he get down there? Where did he come from? What was his motive? What were his background? Russell Keene, over time, became a successful businessman in the Sulphur area. And while he had this passion for finding out about the life of Frasch, he didn't have a whole lot of time because he had a day job and business enterprises. His brother and I went to LSU together, and we got to know each other at LSU. And his brother, Mike, had, of course, heard from his brother for years, but somebody ought to do something about writing a book about Herman Frasch. And Russell gathered information, but just never had the time to put it together or dig deeper. So Mike raised the issue with me, and I was looking for a dissertation topic. I was originally I was working on a political history thing. Actually, I was working on a potential dissertation topic on something called the 74th Congress and the Second New Deal, which is a fascinating topic. That 74th Congress is the Congress that wrote the Social Security Act and the National Labor Relations Act and so forth. But I seem to be not getting very far with it. And this project seemed like, well, that sounds interesting. One of the nice things about a biography is you've got kind of a beginning and an end. You know, somebody's born and they die, and you've got a potential story in there, and there certainly is a climactic event in this man's life. So Russell and I got together, and he shared with me his what he's gathered. He'd gathered together copies of all of Herman Frasch's patents, and he had about 50 patents, most of them not having to do with sulfur, most of them having to do with oil refining and a variety of other things, paint-related patents, gold mining patents, as well as, of course, and soda making and salt making patents. And we started there, and we talk in the book a little bit about the travels necessary. Go up to Cleveland so we can find out something about the guy. Eventually, I was on a European trip. I was able to get to the town where he was born, and the former mayor was fascinated with the guy. After all, he was the boy that left Geildorf and went to America and became Der Schwefelkönig. And he shared some information with me. So I turned it into a dissertation. But the dissertation was a dissertation. It I think did a reasonably good job of sort of tracing the man's work. But we decided this is still not Frasch's life. This is his work, and that's what a man leaves on this earth after his death. But he also leaves something of his personality, and trying to find that was something we worked on until finally I don't think we've really. There's more that could be done, but we've kind of reached the point where we looked about all the places we think we can, and decided last fall to put it together as a book and present it to the world. It's Russell's book. It's his idea. His ideas are all throughout it. But I helped write it, and I did much of the research on it. So it's a joint project, which we think does, at least to some extent, bring back the life of this man. Remind us of what a human being of enormous talent and drive and ambition and persistence or stubbornness can do with his life. Reminds us of that necessary relationship between man and his environment. That, as I said a moment ago, that place out there was only potentially valuable until Herman Frasch came along. Herman Frasch was a very successful oil refiner and a businessman, an inventor in Cleveland. He played a very important role in the growth and development of Standard Oil. But his major contribution was when he was able to take his idea, this astonishingly simple, but just breathtakingly different approach, put those two together, this unique, talented individual with this unique piece of property that it could change the world, could change the United States, could change this area as the sulfur mines eventually played out. Back in the 60s, they got with more sophisticated methods of using his process. They got a little bit more out. But the sulfur industry, in a sense, has moved on. But kind of a jump start to technical, chemical-based industrial economy, which is at the heart of the economy and environment of Southwest Louisiana. So it's been a fun project to explore. I hope we've captured something of the man. We managed to find a little reference to the man as not just a guy going to work every day and coming up with new ideas, but a man that was a family man, a decent guy that thought about other people, a man that even when he played to win, played with energy and drive and enthusiasm. So Herman Frasch, the Sulphur King, is there, and we hope that we've contributed a little bit to keeping the name alive and to explaining to generations today and yet to come why there's a Frasch Elementary School, why there's a Frasch Park, and providing people with a model that lots of things are possible, that the American dream can be a reality. You start with nothing, and now most people start with nothing and end up with nothing. I mean, it's a practical matter. But sometimes you're lucky. Sometimes you're talented. Sometimes you have an opportunity. And if you have that drive and enthusiasm and that talent, you can succeed beyond your wildest dreams. Frasch died in Paris. His second wife, and his first wife came from a relatively deprived background. His second wife was a woman much more used to affluence and enjoyed affluence. They built a mansion in Paris. They built a home on the French Riviera. His daughter, well into her dotage, lived in Paris and was served dinner by footmen wearing livery. I mean, that second generation, and the succeeding generations are not doing too bad off what he made out there. The grandson went to Princeton. The son and the daughter didn't go to college, but the grandchildren went to not just college, but to Princeton and so forth. So as a human being, there is a legacy, but in his own family. But it seems to me that for other people, there's a legacy as well. So that's what I have to say, and I hope you have a chance to look at the book and read through it. Thank you. Thank you. If there's anybody has any questions, certainly I'm open to. Oh, okay.
I have a question for you. When exactly was the book released? I know it's new.
Back in April.
April?
Yeah, we had a book signing at Sulphur High's 100th. Is it 100th anniversary? Could it be possible? Is it? I think it was their centennial. Yeah, and the centennial of Sulphur City is coming up in spring. And one of the interesting things that the same newspaper that reported on his death in Paris, because it was a few days later, also reported on the incorporation of the town of Sulphur. So that the centennial of his death is also in the spring, as well as the centennial of the city of Sulphur. But we released the book in April of this year.
And the second part of my question is, since Frasch is such an important part of the history of Southwest Louisiana, have you gotten any response from the people of Southwest Louisiana about someone finally doing such a good book?
We've gotten pretty positive. One of your colleagues wrote a very positive review of the book as such, and of the enterprise of bringing this man to life again, of encouraging of interest. So we've gotten some positive things. We've also got some, so far, fortunately, very few, but people had, or unfortunately in some cases, of more information. People who since we focus so much on trying to find Frasch the man, there's lots of information that people have in their memory or in their files about life at the mines, And we didn't do as much as we probably could have done about that with the names of people who are still around. I mean, not the people who work at the mines, but their children and grandchildren are still there. So we've gotten pretty positive, very positive. One guy, at some point in the book, we say that since 1880 something, there has been a station of the whatever the Southern Pacific Railroad happens to be called at any given moment, out there at Sulphur, and he said, well, there's not a station there now. So we needed to correct that a little bit. It's not a station stop, but since it's 1880, there's been a place with a sign saying Sulphur over there near the mines. Sure. Yes, sir. You had the.
When did production stop locally?
It stopped in the 20s, about 1924, the first time, and they then began to exploit the oil. Union Sulphur, by the 1930s, I believe, in fact, changed its name from Union Sulphur to Union Sulphur and Oil. It was process of merger became a part of Allied Chemical, and Allied Chemical itself has become a part of something. So that the sulfur production stopped in the 1920s, sometime in the 60s. I don't have the date right in front of me, but sometime in the early 60s, the price of sulfur apparently had grown that it was useful to go back there and see if there's more. And so there's a 2 or 3 years of sulfur production in the 60s. But it's pretty much played out. I don't think there obviously probably some down there, but whether it's how you get to it and so forth, and the land, of course, is now being used for other things too. Those great big huge caverns are just a wonderful place to store stuff because you take 9 million tons of sulfur, you got a big empty hole in the ground, and so the land is used for storage, and I don't know if there's any actual production out there. I think they store, they use the caverns, but yeah, the sulfur industry as such, I don't believe there's any Frasch wells currently producing in the United States at all. The last big one was at Port Sulphur down off the Mississippi River, and I think the Texas ones played out sometime in the 60s as well. Yes, sir.
Could you mention, and I know you sort of talked about it, what sources did you use to kind of find out this man's personality?
Okay.
Then I have a second question.
Okay.
Do you think part of his personality comes from the kind of historical moment that he was a part of?
Oh, yeah. Well, some of it comes from his just his human background. As you said, the time. He was born in Germany in 1851. Born in southwestern Germany, which had a tradition of artisanship and craftsmanship. There's the region's called Swabia, and the Swabians are notorious among Germans for being hardworking and persistent, and Germans usually have that general kind of image. He grew up in a family. His father was a civil servant. It was the mayor of the town. It wasn't elected. Back in those days, the mayors of towns in the kingdom where he lived were appointed by the central government. So it was, his father, when Frasch was born, his father was mayor of a small town, and as Frasch grew up in a little bit bigger town where his father became. So he came from an environment where hard work, where persistence were honored as virtues, and where people could see. Not, as I said, most people don't become sulphur king, but they could see in their own lives the value of hard work and training and persistence. And then, of course, the times. It was a time, I think, when, and I hesitate to compare the past with the present, because as somebody once said, the past is kind of a foreign country. It's hard to capture. But risk-taking was something that, think about that risk that 16-year-old boy took when he got on that boat. and traveled 3,000 miles across an ocean with the hope and expectation that that uncle in Philadelphia would know who he was and would have room to take him in and willingness to take him in. So that there, to some extent, the openness of American society, the German, there's 2 or 3 obituaries of him in German, and almost all of the German obituaries remark upon not so much the land out here in Sulphur, but the necessity for Frasch to go to America to be successful. That had he stayed in Germany, it would have been awfully easy for him to follow a path of success. I mean, do an apprentice program, do well at the apprentice program, work hard, over time become a master craftsman, take care of your wife and kids. That's nothing wrong with that. That's a successful life. But the kind of success he enjoyed, the challenges he faced were only possible in the United States of America at that time. That it was a much more open society. When he was living as a kid in Germany, he early on developed this interest in becoming a druggist, becoming a pharmacist. Well, becoming a pharmacist in Germany back in those days, you had to apprentice. You had to go to a classically oriented education. If you wanted to be a guy that owned his own drugstore, you had to have a university education. All of which took time and following the rules and punching your. Whereas in America, he worked a couple of years in the drugstore, and when he was 19, he opened his own. There weren't a whole lot of controls and so forth. So. Yeah, the time, the environment are always crucial, I think, to opportunities. And then, of course, the magic of that land out there that made possible that specific form of success.
He was kind of like an elderly person told me many years ago, some people see clay, they see it as a nuisance, but a dreamer sees it as a useful pot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And she said that's the difference between the people that we see their accomplishments and the people that I thought about that and never do anything about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, as I said, the Frasch process is. Well, why did I think about that? I mean, it's just. But nobody did. Nobody looked at that and said, why not take this idea and apply it here? Just think, there's nothing, each part of all 3 Frasch processes, there's nothing particularly new about any piece of them. But it's, as you said, looking at a problem and seeing something different from the way other people see it. I've heard that about Michelangelo.
Not to say, or when I was around her, not to say, I wonder if that would work, I wonder if this, because and when are you going to get started?
You're right. Find out for yourself, yeah. Try it. If it does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But yeah, you're talking about clay, and I've heard that said about Michelangelo, that he looked at a piece of marble and he saw David. He saw Moses. Where other people just saw a block of marble. He looked at the veins and so forth or whatever, and I see them. I just have to chip that stuff away, and there's that image that I have in my head. Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, sir.
Let's say, I'm Chris Duncan, the mayor of Sulphur.
Oh, and Doug, we met. Yeah.
The Sulphur Mines property right now has a lot of natural gas wells on it.
It does have gas wells. Okay,
that was
great.
something that wasn't tapped way back when.
Right. Yeah.
So that you know what's happening in the future.
Yeah.
We are going to celebrate a month early with the our 100-year celebration. We're going to do it from March 12th through March 16th.
Excellent.
In conjunction with Brimstone Museum.
Yeah.
Tom and Eric are here from Brimstone Museum.
Yes,
and,
it's good to see you guys. Good to see you.
A little bit on the permanent Herman Frasch display that's going to be placed in the Sulphur Brimstone Museum in the new expansion that's going on. And also, Eric here has designed everything with Tom in regards to our bicentennial, our centennial pictures and everything. We are honoring Herman Frasch on it. We actually have a coin in production as we speak.
It's the centennial of his death as well, so it plays in very neatly, yeah.
Correct, and the poster's going to be Herman Frasch on it, as well as all the banners that are going to fly in the city. So it was
This guy's going to
great
be out
come
in the public. Well, thank you, sir.
today there, and hopefully you'll be able to, either you or Russell will be able to be at the centennial so that we can have your book there, and I know Tom has some books that he's selling in the store too there. But hopefully, you might be able to make a trip into town for the centennial.
Well,
It's
thank you.
March 12th through the 16th. And Herman Frasch is our main focus of it because he's our founding father of the
Thank
city
you.
of Sulphur.
I'm delighted to hear that. I know that the Brimstone Museum folks have done a good job, and I'm delighted that with your interest in the thing. One thing I did this summer was I had the former mayor of Geldorf had helped me out with a little bit of the basically genealogy stuff, who Frasch's parents were, school records, so forth, some of the local records that I never had really get into. And so I sent him a copy of the book, and I didn't hear from him. And I was in Europe this summer. I try to time my time in Prague to the summer, and then my time in San Antonio to the winter. you might understand the reason for that. But I went over to Geldorf, and Mr. Mayor Koenig had gotten the book, but his reading English skills are not very strong, and so he had turned it over to a local newspaper guy to read. And they were very, so when I got there, rather than meeting with him, which was my expectation, there was a newspaper guy from the Südwestlandschau there. So we got a little bit of publicity and sold about 10 books. And there's a picture of me underneath Frasch, the sign for Fraschstrasse, Frasch Street. So they continue to be interested in this boy that is probably the most significant figure to emerge, at least on the world stage, from that little village there, and some interest in a sister city relationship with Sulphur. So I hope that that the international impact of this guy is there, and I think that what y'all are doing is just it's something I think of course I spent my life as an historian, so I've got a bias there, but that. Where we came from, who helped create these opportunities and set standards for us. So.
And then the other thing we're going to be doing is, with their cooperation, we're working on the Sulphur Memorial Wall.
Yeah.
We're actually fixing to go out for a request for proposal on an architect, and Herman Frasch is going to be a big part of that wall too.
Yeah.
For everything he's done. And Tom, you want to tell a little bit about the permanent display that we're going to have?
Sure.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot.
No, yeah, I'm talking about that all day. We're working on a permanent display on the history of the sulfur mines. There will be a whole wall actually that will be focused on just Herman Frasch. And then the wall will be split up between a section on Herman Frasch and the section of the sulfur mines. There'll be a whole wing that's devoted to the industry in the area and how it derived from that. There'll be a section on the people in town. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in Sulphur that started from nothing and created businesses that wouldn't have been there without the skilled laborers that came in to work at the mines. And after the mines sort of were depleted, they filtered into the community and became businessmen and all. And also the businessmen that started up to support these engineers and laborers out at the mines. Then we'll have a whole section of the other side of the building which will be devoted to the city of Sulphur's history. Early civic installations, the religious history, the recreational history of the town. People always talk about the movie theaters that were in Sulphur at one point, and a lot of people don't remember that, the kids anyway, because they don't exist now. But those buildings are important to the city's history. So we're working on that. We'll have that open at the time of the city's centennial. That'll be our grand opening celebration.
Good. Where will that be located?
It's at the old railroad depot on Ruth Street in Sulphur, exit 20. We are the Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center right there. So within that little museum campus there, those are the Brimstone itself, the depot, that's where we focus on art, on history, I'm sorry. And in the Henning Cultural Center, we do a lot of art shows for local artists and things. So we do a lot of student shows, try to keep students involved in learning about art and history as well. So we're actually also working on some lesson plans and things, try to get field trips out to the museum. They'll spend a week or so studying about the town's history and learning about the Sulphur mines and Herman Frasch. And then they'll come visit us and we'll actually show them that history, which will be really a nice experience for all the kids at Sulphur. I remember going to the museum as a kid, and I asked myself as the museum guy, why don't we have that now? And so we're working really hard to develop that and build that into something that future generations can learn about early on.
Absolutely. Something important happened here.
Absolutely.
And something important continues to happen here. I mean, it's not a story in the past. It's a story of people facing challenges and adversity and working the way through it. So, thank you very much, Mayor Duncan.
Let me ask, you want to talk about how we developed what we're doing for the centennial?
Yeah, for the first time ever, we're going to have a fully developed picture of Herman Frasch in color as he appeared in life. A lot of times, the only pictures that we have of Herman Frasch were black and white, or they're very...
Yeah, there's only about 2 or 3 of them.
There's only a very few of them. So, setting out and working on this picture with the city and stuff like that to bring to life Herman Frasch as a real-life man with color and detail that weren't really visible in photographs before. So it should be a pretty exciting picture for the community and just for historical values to be able to see the fully colorized versions of Frasch. Pretty fantastic stuff. So,
yeah, apparently he had reddish hair, but you have no. I mean, don't look like a redhead there. I think by the time this picture was taken, he looked more like me. I also used to be a redhead. They tell me. But yeah, there's some, of course, about those formal portraits of people back in the 19th century. Anybody, whatever you were, that just look awfully stiff and not really particularly human. So that's great to capture some of that personality in the person. And thank you. I'm so glad y'all are doing that, sir.
So do you know what color his eyes were by any chance?
I believe blue, but I'm not absolutely certain. But are we guessing the same thing? Good. Yeah. But there's one reference. When he was working for Standard Oil, one of the guys that worked under him was the fellow who later developed the system of cracking. When Frasch was in the oil business, it was all kerosene, but gasoline came in, and the guy was working for him on another project, became over time sort of Frasch's successor, and we have one note from him describing Frasch, and I don't think it describes his eye color, but he talks about it being kind of redheaded, and some of the stereotypes associated with redheaded people too, kind of just volatile personalities and that sort of thing. And no, I'm so glad. First of all, that y'all were able to make it across the Calcasieu River Bridge and come over here. And when I go to, I'm a nervous driver, so for me to get to Sulphur, I have to go up through Moss Bluff and across that much lower bridge than. But it's delightful to have a chance to chat afterwards. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I'm delighted to see you all found time on this Tuesday morning to come out and think about Herman Frasch and listen to what we had to say about it. Thank you very much.